Hey everyone, and welcome back. I was thinking the other day about how we talk about student well-being, but it seems like it's all kind of fluffy clouds,
Yeah.
and rainbows, and that's great, but what about the actual, practical stuff? How do we actually build schools that support every single student?
That is exactly what we're diving into today.
Okay, so tell me more.
We are going to get into the nitty-gritty of multi-tiered systems of support, MTSS for short.
Catchy.
And we'll see how it can make a difference in student well-being.
For real this time.
For real this time, no more fluffy clouds.
All right, I like it. So what are we looking at today? What's got you so fired up about MTSS?
Well, we've got some hot off the presses guidance here for this coming school year,
Ooh,
with a special focus on the SEB Academy, which, in case you're wondering, stands for Social, Emotional, Behavioral.
makes sense.
Yeah, they're all about giving schools the tools to actually be that supportive environment.
Hmm.
Which, that's a pretty inspiring goal, right?
It is. Especially right now, I feel like with everything going on, everyone's kind of grasping for those solutions.
Absolutely. We're talking about a full-on youth mental health crisis right now. And on top of that, you've got these school-based support systems that honestly feel more like a patchwork quilt than a safety net.
Okay, so where does MTSS fit into all of this?
So that is where MTSS comes in. What I find really interesting is that the SEB Academy isn't just saying, hey, MTSS is a good idea. You know,
Right.
they're all about making it actually doable.
I like doable.
Yeah. Practical, data-driven, something that schools can really use.
Okay, because data, sometimes I feel like schools are drowning in data.
Oh, they are.
So
They are swimming in it.
how do we even begin to make sense of it
Well,
all?
that's the key. It's not about adding more data. It's about using what they already have strategically. Think like attendance records, behavior incidents, even those school climate surveys that everyone loves to give.
Oh, yeah.
It's all about connecting the dots to see what's really going on.
So less work, more.
Exactly.
Right.
Working smarter, not harder.
I like it.
It's like having all these puzzle pieces, and MTSS is like, here's how you put them together to see the full picture of student well-being.
I'm intrigued. So this full picture, this is where the whole tiered support thing comes in,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Break it down for me.
All right, so imagine a pyramid.
Okay. I'm picturing it.
Okay, at the bottom, tier one,
Mm-hmm.
you've got those things that are good for all students no matter what, like school-wide SEL curriculum or mindfulness exercises, those kinds of things.
Gotcha.
Moving up to tier two, we get a little more targeted. So think small group work for students who might need some extra help in a certain area. And then at the very top, tier three, we're talking about those really intensive supports for students who need a lot more, like individual therapy or counseling.
So it's like this safety net with all these different levels to make sure that no one falls through the cracks.
Exactly.
But how do schools actually figure out who needs what level? Like, do they just draw names out of a hat?
Lives. I wish it were that simple. That's where this whole identification, matching, and monitoring cycle comes in. We're getting really into it now.
Oh, I'm ready. Hit me with it.
It's all about using data, but making it actually helpful, not just another spreadsheet on someone's desk.
Because data-driven can be a little scary sometimes.
Absolutely.
Like, quick. Everyone learn advanced calculus to help a second grader?
Right. Like, what does that even mean?
Right.
No, it's not that at all.
Yeah.
This cycle's about breaking it down. So first you're identifying who needs more support. This could be based on anything: grades, behavior, teacher observations, you name it.
Makes sense.
And then you match them with the right support. So let's say a student needs some help with emotional regulation. You're going to match them with a tier two group that focuses on that. And then here's the really important part you have to monitor. Is it working? Do we need to change things up? It's a process.
So it's not just like set it and forget it.
No.
It's constantly evolving.
Constantly checking in, making sure things are on track.
Okay, I like it. So can you give me an example? What would this look like in a real school?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's say a school, they're doing great. They implemented a new SEL curriculum. Everyone's using it. That's their tier one.
Okay.
But then they look at their data. Maybe behavior referrals are up. Maybe teachers are saying, hey, this isn't really clicking. And they realize a few students in, let's say, third grade, they're really struggling with emotional regulation.
So that might be a sign to bump things up to like a tier two.
Exactly. They might start a small group just for those students to really focus on building those emotional regulation skills. And then maybe within that group, there's one student who's still really struggling.
Hmm.
That's where tier three comes in.
Hmm.
Maybe connecting them with a school counselor or some outside resources. It's about being responsive and really meeting students where they're at.
And that's what I think is so important because it's not enough to just have these tiers in place,
It's
right?
definitely not.
Like,
Yeah.
it takes more than just good intentions to make MTSS actually work.
You hit the nail on the head. It's like trying to build a house. You wouldn't just start nailing boards together without a plan, right?
Probably not.
You need a blueprint. And that's what we're going to talk about next. The SCB material actually highlights 3 key things that make this whole thing work.
Okay, so walk me through these MTSS building codes. What are we talking about here?
All right, so they talk about leadership staff, competency, and effective implementation.
Hmm.
These are like the pillars holding the whole thing up.
Okay, so it's not enough for a principal to just say, we care about well-being and call it a day.
No, no, no.
Wait,
Leadership needs to be active, communicating that vision, making sure everyone's on board.
Gotcha.
It's like an orchestra conductor.
Yeah.
They're not just waving their arms around for fun. They're setting the tempo, bringing all the different instruments together to make something amazing.
And even with a great conductor, you need musicians who actually know how to play their instruments.
Exactly.
Huh.
And that is where staff competency comes in. Teachers, counselors, support staff, everybody needs the skills and the support to implement MTSS well. And we're not talking about a one-and-done training here. This is ongoing professional development, creating a culture where everyone feels confident and ready to support students.
Yeah, that makes sense because you can have the best program in the world, but if teachers don't feel comfortable using it, it's not going to do much good. And that kind of ties into that third pillar, right? Effective implementation.
Yes.
Because even with the shared vision and great staff, you can still trip over the execution.
It's so true. It's about picking the right programs for your school, making sure they're actually being implemented correctly, and that they're making a real difference for students. Quality over quantity. Pick a few things and do them well.
Yeah, it's not about having stuff. It's about having the right stuff
Exact.
and using it the right way. And you know what else is essential for making sure the right stuff is being used the right way? It's a thing we keep dancing around.
Data.
Well, yes, but even bigger than data, I'd say.
It's equity. Oh, absolutely.
Because the system is only as good as how well it serves every single student. And that's something that the SEB Academy really emphasizes.
100%. They are all about weaving equity into every single part of MTSS.
So this isn't like a separate checklist. It's got to be part of everything you do.
It's got to be in everything.
So it's asking questions like, are these supports actually relevant for all our students? Are we reaching the students who need it most?
Yes. Are we even looking at the data the right way?
That's such a good point. Because you could have all this data, but if you're not looking at it through an equity lens, then you're missing a huge part of the picture.
You're missing a huge piece.
Which brings us back to data, but in a way that feels useful,
Right.
not overwhelming. And this is where I think that data inventory tool comes in that you mentioned.
Yeah, exactly.
Because when I hear data inventory, I'll be honest, I kind of picture a dusty old spreadsheet
Wow, yeah.
with a million columns. So break it down for me. What makes this tool so special?
Okay, so the good news is it's not about adding more data collection.
Okay, good.
It actually helps schools take a step back and look at what they already have. Attendance discipline referrals, those climate surveys we talked about, and ask those tough questions. Like, are we missing something? Are we accidentally disadvantaging certain students with how we're using this information?
It's like holding up a mirror to your data and making sure it lines up with your goals, which, let's be real, that's a lot to process.
Yeah.
That can feel really overwhelming for schools, even with the best intention.
Oh, absolutely. But the good neuse is the SEB Academy doesn't just throw information at you and say, good luck.
Oh, good, because I was going to say.
They are incredibly hands-on with support.
Okay, so tell me more about that. What does it actually look like for a school to work with the SEB Academy? Are we talking like weekend-long workshops, mountains of paperwork? Paint me a picture.
Think of it less like boot camp and more like having a really supportive mentor by your side. They pair each school with a dedicated coach who helps them figure out their specific needs, set goals, and make a plan using the tools we've been talking about.
So it's very customized.
Super customized.
No two schools are getting the same cookie-cutter plan.
Exactly. They get it. Every school is different.
Right.
There's no one-size-fits-all.
Which makes sense. So it's about meeting schools where they're at, not handing them some prepackaged solution that's not going to work.
Exactly.
But I imagine even with that personalized support, schools probably hit some roadblocks along the way. It's a big change to make.
Oh, for sure. And actually, the material actually highlights some of the common challenges that schools face.
Play.
Feeling overwhelmed, not knowing where to start, lack of coordination, people working in silos, just feeling stuck.
It's like you can't see the forest for the trees.
Exactly. And I think it's important to remember that building a strong MTSS It's not about reaching some perfect finish line overnight.
Right.
It's a journey.
And speaking of journeys, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
We started with this big, sometimes overwhelming idea of MTSS, but then we zoomed in on the SEB Academy's approach, which is all about making it practical and equitable and really focusing on what's going to make a difference for students.
I completely agree.
But I think what's really refreshing is their honesty about the process.
Yes.
They're not trying to sugarcoat it.
Right.
They're saying, look, this is hard work. It's going to be messy. There will be bumps along the way. But they're also saying, it's worth it, and we're here to support you every step of the way.
Exactly. And that support is crucial. Having someone in your corner who understands the challenges and can offer guidance and encouragement can make all the difference.
And that brings us back to those coaches that we talked about earlier. I want to dig a little deeper into that because when I think coach, I'll be honest, I think of someone yelling at me to run faster.
Oh, yeah.
But it sounds like the SEB Academy's coaching style is a lot more zen.
Definitely more zen. Think of them as a thought partner, a guide on the side.
Okay, I like that.
They're not there to tell you what to do, but to help you figure out your own solutions.
So what might that actually look like? Let's say a school is feeling totally lost. Like they've got all this data and no idea where to even start.
That's where the coach steps in. They might start by helping the school use that data inventory tool we talked about to see what information they already have and where there might be some gaps. Or maybe the school's doing great with their Tier 1 supports, but the referral process for Tier 2 and 3 is a mess.
Oh, yeah. That can get messy.
Oh, it can be a nightmare. So the coach can help them streamline that process, make sure students are getting the help they need at the right time.
So it's about meeting schools where they're at, recognizing that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to MTSS.
Exactly. And it's not a one-and-done deal either. The SEB Academy is all about continuous improvement, always reflecting, always tweaking, and making sure the system is working for everyone.
It's not about reaching MTSS perfection because that doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
It's about always trying to do better for students.
I love that. Because it really highlights that this is an ongoing process. It's not about checking boxes and saying, okay, we're done. It requires humility.
Yeah.
We're always learning, we're always growing, and that benefits not just students, but the whole school community.
That is a great point to end on because it is bigger than just individual students. When schools make well-being a priority, it changes everything.
Absolutely. It changes the whole culture of the school.
Well, we have covered a lot of ground today. We talked about the why behind MTSS, the nuts and bolts of how it actually works, and even dipped our toes into the world of data and equity. But most importantly, I hope this deep dive has given you some practical things to think about.
Me too.
Things that you can bring back to your own schools and communities, because at the end of the day, that's what really matters. Taking this knowledge and actually using it to create more supportive, equitable, and thriving schools for every
Well,
student.
that's so well said.
Thank you.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, thanks for diving in with us today, everyone. And remember, even small steps can lead to big change. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep the conversation going.
They talk about leadership, staff competency, and effective implementation. Those are the pillars holding the whole thing up.
Okay, so it's not enough for the principal to just say, like, we care about well-being.
Nope.
And that's it. We're good.
Not quite. Leadership has to be active. They need to be communicating that vision clearly, making sure everyone's on board.
Makes sense.
Like, think of an orchestra conductor. They're not just like waving their arms around randomly. They're setting the tempo, bringing all the different instruments together so they can make something amazing.
I like that analogy. Even with a great conductor, you still need those musicians who know how to play their instruments.
You got it. That's staff competency.
Oh.
Teachers, counselors, support staff. They all need the right skills, the support to really implement MTSS well. And it's not just a one-time training either. It's got to be ongoing professional development, creating a culture where everybody feels supported and ready to really help those students.
Because you can have the best SEL program in the world, but if teachers don't know how to use it or they don't feel comfortable using it,
Right.
it's not going to work.
Exactly. It's not going to do much good.
Right.
And, that kind of connects to that third pillar,
Which is,
effective implementation.
okay.
Because even if you've got everybody on board, you've got the vision, you've got skilled staff, you can still mess up the execution.
It's all about the follow-through.
Right. So it's about choosing the right programs for your school's needs, making sure they're being used correctly, and most importantly, that they're actually making a difference for students.
It's got to be about quality, not just quantity.
Exactly. Pick a few things and do them really well.
Don't try to do everything at once.
Yeah, don't try to boil the ocean.
Right. Okay, I like that. So we're talking about doing a few things really well and making sure that those things are actually the right things to be doing. And to do that, you need something.
You need data.
Well, yes,
Got it.
but even bigger than data, I would say equity.
Yes.
Because a system is only as good as it serves every single student. And this is something else that the SES Academy really seems to get right.
They do. They are all about integrating equity into every single part of the MTSS process.
It's not a separate thing.
No, it's embedded in every single decision.
So it's asking questions like, are these supports actually working for all of our students? Are we reaching the students who need it the most?
Yes. And are we even looking at the data in a way that makes sense?
Oh, that's such a good point.
Right.
Because you can have all this data,
Yeah.
but if you're not analyzing it through an equity lens, you're missing a huge piece of the puzzle.
You're missing a huge piece.
Which brings us back to data, but this time in a way that feels useful and not completely overwhelming. And this is where I think that data inventory tool that we talked about comes in.
Yes.
Because data inventory makes me think of like a dusty old spreadsheet
Oh, yeah, those can be scary.
with like a million columns.
So many numbers.
Break it down for me. What makes this tool different?
Okay, so the good news is it's not about collecting more data.
Thank goodness.
You can breathe. It actually helps schools take a step back and look at what they're already collecting. You know, attendance, discipline, referrals, those climate surveys that we talked about. And it helps them ask those important equity questions. Like, are we missing something? Are we accidentally leaving some students out with the way we're doing things?
So it's like taking a good hard look in the mirror at your data practices,
Exactly.
making sure that they're actually lining up with your goals. And honestly, that is a lot to think about.
It is.
It can feel really overwhelming for schools, even if they have the best intentions in the world.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But here's the good news. The SEB Academy doesn't just like throw a bunch of information at you and say, good luck, figure it out.
Okay, good, because I was going to say.
They're incredibly hands-on with support.
So tell me more about what that looks like. What does it actually look like for a school to work with the SEB Academy? Like, are we talking weekend-long workshops, mountains of paperwork? Give you the details.
It's way more chill than that, I would say.
Yeah.
Think of it less like boot camp and more like having a super supportive mentor by your side.
Okay.
Each school is paired up with a dedicated coach
A coach?
who helps them figure out what their needs are, what their goals are, and then helps them come up with a plan using all these tools that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, each school gets paired with a coach,
Mm.
and that coach helps them figure out their needs, set their goals, and then make a plan using all the tools we've been discussing.
So it's very, like, tailored to each school.
Yeah, super customized. They get that every school is different.
Yeah.
There's no one size fits all.
Makes sense. So it's about meeting schools where they're at, not just handing them something generic and being like, here you go, good luck.
Yeah, exactly.
But I can imagine even with all that support, those schools are probably hitting some roadblocks. It's a big shift to make in how you're doing things.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, the document even talks about some of the challenges that schools run into.
Okay, what kinds of things?
Well, you know, feeling overwhelmed, not knowing where to start, struggling with coordination,
Yeah.
people working in silos, just feeling stuck.
Like you can't see the forest for the trees.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to remember that building a good, strong MTSS for student well-being, it's not something you do overnight. You're not going to hit some magical finish line. It's a journey.
Speaking of journeys, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
Started off with MTSS, which honestly can feel a little overwhelming at first.
Yeah, it's a lot.
But we really zoomed in on the SEB Academy's approach, which again is all about making it doable for schools, making it focused on equity, and really thinking about what's going to actually work for students.
Yeah. And I think their honesty about that whole process is really refreshing.
I agree.
They're not trying to say it's easy. They're like, look, this is going to be hard work. It's going to be messy. You're going to hit some bumps along the way. But they're also saying it's worth it. We're here for you.
Right. And that support makes a big difference.
Huge difference. Having someone in your corner who gets it, who understands the challenges and can offer some guidance,
That's really key.
that encouragement, I think, can make or break the whole thing.
Totally. And that kind of brings us back to those coaches that we were talking about before.
Yes.
And I want to dig into that a little bit more because I think when we hear coach, we often think of someone who's like, yelling at us to run faster.
Do more. Be better.
Exactly. But it sounds like the SEB Academy's approach to coaching is a little more zen.
It's definitely more zen. Think less drill sergeant, more like a thought partner. Someone who's there to listen to bounce ideas off of.
Okay, so they're like a guide on the side.
Exactly. They're not there to tell you what to do.
Yeah.
They're there to help you figure out your own solutions.
So what might that look like in a real school? Let's say a school is feeling really stuck. They've got all this data, they don't know where to begin.
Okay, so that's where the coach steps in, right? They might help the school use that data inventory tool we talked about to kind of figure out what information they already have,
Yeah.
where the gaps might be,
Okay.
or maybe the school has a good handle on their Tier 1 supports, but their referral process for Tier 2 and Tier 3 is a complete disaster.
Oh, yeah, those can get messy.
The worst. So the coach can help them get organized, streamline that process, make sure that students are getting the right support at the right time without all that headache.
So it's really about individualizing that support, recognizing that what works for one school might not work for another.
100%. And it's not like, okay, we did the training, we checked the box, we're done.
Yeah.
The SEB Academy is really big on this idea of continuous improvement,
Always getting better.
always reflecting, always making little tweaks to the system,
Yeah.
and always making sure that it's actually working for everyone.
Well, it's not about reaching like MTSS perfection because that doesn't exist. It's about striving to do better
Exactly.
for your students.
For your staff.
Yes. And I love that because it really highlights the fact that this is an ongoing process. It's not about checking boxes. It requires us to be humble.
Yeah.
We're always learning. We're always growing. And that benefits everybody, students, staff, the whole school community.
And that is a really great point to end on because it is bigger than just individual students. When schools make well-being a priority, it changes the whole culture.
It really does. It changes everything.
Well, we covered a lot today. We talked about the why behind MTSS, how it actually works in practice, and we even got into that really important connection between data and equity.
We did.
But I think most importantly, I hope this deep dive has given everyone listening some concrete takeaways.
Yes. Something you can actually use. Things that you can bring back to your own schools, your own districts, your own communities, because at the end of the day, that's what matters. Taking this knowledge and putting it into action, creating schools that are more supportive, more equitable, and ultimately more successful for every single student.
So well said. I couldn't agree more.
Well, thank you for diving in with us today, everyone. And remember, even small steps can lead to big change. So keep learning, keep growing, and we'll see you next time.